Welcome to The Blitz, a podcast from Coram Deo Church. The Blitz is all about tackling tough topics head-on at full speed. Are you ready? Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of the day it is that you happen to be listening to this podcast. My name is John. I'm the lead pastor of Coram Deo Church, and I will be your host once again on The Blitz. I don't even know what episode number this is, but we're in for a doozy today. Our topic is going to be misplaced outrage. Does that sound like a weird thing to talk about? Well, we're going to get into it right now. Misplaced outrage. I want to talk basically about two things. One, what is it? And then why is it? So when I say misplaced outrage, what am I talking about? And hopefully as I talk about it, you'll kind of have eyes to see it if you don't already see it. But then we're going to ask the question, why does this thing exist? Why is there such a thing as misplaced outrage? So let's first talk about what is misplaced outrage. And I would simply define it as this: getting outraged or getting, concerned and outspoken and frustrated over all the wrong things. Okay? It's getting concerned and getting outraged over all the wrong things. And there's often a sense of irony to this. So I'm going to give you just a couple brief examples of misplaced outrage, and I think you'll kind of catch the idea of what we're talking about here. Last week, my wife and I got away for some vacation time in the sun, in the heat. We had initially planned on going to Hawaii, but Hawaii is just crazy right now with mandates and masking and going to a beach and having, cops come and tell us to keep our masks on. Did not sound like a good time, nor were we interested in paying the $400 in test fees that we would have to pay in order for both of us to get tested at the airport and to prove to Hawaii that we, in fact, did not have the plague. So we actually made an audible on our way to get our test. We said, forget this. We're going to Vegas. So we looked up on my app real quick to see what we could get some hotels and flights for. And, of course, it was ridiculously cheap. So we headed off to Vegas for a couple days. It was in the 90s, up to 99 one day. And if you know anything about us, my wife loved it and I loved her. So I sat out in the sun with her by the pool as well. Okay, so while we were in Vegas, the hotels are set up to where you really don't need to leave ever. And you could just stay in the hotel. It's like its own, its own city, self-sufficient city. But we would go down the main strip a little bit and, go get food or go get drinks or, go see stuff. And so there's this one, it's kind of like an alleyway. It's kind of like a main alleyway. There's all sorts of cool restaurants and bars and there's a zip line that goes overhead and most importantly, In-N-Out is there. And, we're just the kind of people that we get excited about In-N-Out. It's like you can go to really, really fancy restaurants or you can go get a #1 animal style that sounds really good. So anyway, so we would go there to get our In-N-Out, and there's also ice cream and stuff. So anyways, as you enter into this alley, there's just thousands of people who walk down this alley because of all the shops that are there. So at the kind of the opening of this alley where it meets the main strip, of course, there are lots of people trying to get your attention. So, and it depended on what time of the day you were there. But anyway, so as you would start to walk down this alley, there was just I don't know how to say this and not sound crass. There was just a number of women that were dressed in the least amount of clothes they could possibly wear and still be legal. And what they're trying to do is get you to pay them money to take a picture with them. So these women are basically wearing stickers. We're going to go PG-13, stickers over their nipples. They have pasties on. And then the thinnest, non-existent G-string you could possibly imagine. And you're just like, oh my gosh, please put some clothes on. You're trying to look down. And they're everywhere. And they just come up to you and like, oh, let's take a picture, right? So on the one hand, right, so you got to get this, you got to imagine this. On the one hand, you've got these groups of girls, right? And they're all over and they're wearing like nothing, okay? And then in the middle of this group, in the entryway to this alley, there is a single stand with a security guard sitting there, and he's telling people to make sure to cover your faces, which of course no one was doing. But I just want you to capture the irony of this moment, okay? You've got basically, almost naked women running around, and what's being enforced is people covering their face. So just think of the juxtaposition of that. What should we be covering right now? All right? Should we be covering our bodies or covering our mouth? Okay? They're concerned about covering the wrong thing. It's misplaced outrage. Okay? Another example. Back in the football season, when I was still paying attention to the NFL, there was a story of Dwayne Haskins. Dwayne Haskins was a quarterback of Ohio State. And if you know anything about Ohio State quarterbacks, they're very, very mobile. That's kind of the way that they go. Well, Dwayne Haskins ended up in the NFL, and he ended up playing. He was drafted, and he played for, at that time, the Washington Redskins, but now it's the Washington football team. So he is the quarterback, and he was the starting quarterback, and I think he was even made a captain of the Washington football team. Okay, but something happened. A story leaked. And what happened, right? And I'm going to read this. This is a quote from the New York Post. This is how the story was reported. In one story, a woman is sitting on the Washington quarterback's lap with both parties holding wads of cash without masks on. Okay, so I'm watching this story actually on ESPN. I'll watch ESPN in the morning sometimes. And as they're reporting the story, what happened is there was a birthday party, and Haskins went out for his friends, and they were with, strippers, and they were at a strip club, and there were women, doing all sorts of stuff to this party of buddies who were out to celebrate. And what the reporter, I think it was Molly Kiram is her name, what ESPN was highlighting was not the fact that here is the starting quarterback who's a captain of the NFL, of an NFL team. The story wasn't that he was out with hookers and strippers. The story was out he was with strippers without a mask. Right? That was the outrage. That was the story. How dare you go out with strippers without masks on? Okay. Here's another example. If you ever get in a conversation with somebody about abortion, what you will find out is that those who are pro-abortion, right? They are pro-dismemberment. They will say they're pro-choice, but what that really means is that they're they're for the killing of innocent children. If you get into a conversation with somebody who holds that position and you suggest that dismembering unborn children in the womb is morally wrong, reprehensible, and should be ended, there will be more outrage about your position than there is outrage about the fact that children are being murdered. Okay? So it's okay for children to be murdered, but it's not okay for you to suggest that that is morally evil. Okay? So in each of those examples, there is outrage, right? You better cover your face. How dare you not cover your face with hookers? And how dare you suggest that murdering innocent children is wrong? There's outrage, but it's misplaced, right? The outrage is aimed at the wrong thing. So that's what misplaced outrage is. Those are examples of it. And it's pervasive. It's everywhere. If you watch, listen to the media, you watch stuff on social media, it's everywhere. Misplaced outrage. People getting frustrated and irritated, and they're angered over all the wrong things. Now, I want to ask the question, why does this happen? Why are we so susceptible? Why do we have such a strong propensity, maybe say an inescapable draw to getting outraged over all of the wrong things? Okay, so there's two things that we're going to discuss to kind of explain this a little bit. First of all, human beings are not accidents. We did not evolve from some primordial soup. The universe is not eternal. We are not stardust. All human beings are made in the image of God. God made us in his image, male and female. Genesis says he created them. Those are not social constructs. Those are not things we define for ourselves. Those are not terms that we create. They are gifts received by God. God made all people in his image. Now, there is a lot of discussion on what exactly all that involves. What does it mean to be made in the image of God? And really great theologians have discussed this and have had different ideas of how far that goes, how deep that goes, all of the implications of being an image bearer of God. But what the church has believed and understood, and theologians have agreed on for hundreds of years, is that we are moral agents. God is a moral being. He determines right and wrong. You see that in the very beginning of Genesis, where God puts limits on the water. He separates things. There's a binary reality built into the very fabric of creation: night and day, light and dark, water and earth. Male and female. And in Genesis chapter 2, God instructs Adam, this is what you are to do. You're to defend and to care for this garden. Here's what you are not to do. You're not to determine good and evil for yourself. You're not to eat the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That was the law that was given to him. And so God is a moral being. God gives a moral law to Moses on Sinai. When Jesus is asked about the greatest, the most important law, he says that we are to love the Lord our God with everything that we have, and we are to love our neighbor as ourself. So God is a moral being. In 1 John, it says that he is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. The angels that we see in Isaiah cry out, holy, holy, holy. We said that as well in the book of Revelation. So God is a moral being. He is not indifferent. He loves what is good. He determines and defines what is good. And he also hates what is evil. And he is opposed to all evil. We are made in his image, which means we bear that moral sensibility, that moral awareness. We know there is right and that there is wrong. We know that the right is good, and we know that the wrong is bad. It is an inescapable reality because we're made in his image. So part of what it means to be made in the image of God is that we are, like God, moral beings, right? We choose, we make choices, we know there's right, we know that there's wrong. We want to celebrate what's right, and we want to oppose that which is wrong. That is an inescapable reality. As you look at the political landscape right now in our country, you will see that that is going on. We want to celebrate what is good, and we want to oppose what is wrong. But here is the issue. And by the way, that's true of both sides, okay? But here is the issue. We have redefined what is good and what is wrong, okay? That's the problem. We have redefined what is good and what is wrong. This is exactly what the Apostle Paul talks about in Romans chapter 1. He talks about the reality that everybody knows there's a God. God has made himself abundantly known through creation, which we live in, we observe, we take it in all of the time. But here's the problem. In verse 21, it says, "For although they knew God," everybody knows God. "For although they knew God, they did not honor him or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools, and they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore, God gave them up in the lust of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie." There's the problem. We are moral beings. We cannot escape making moral judgments. Everybody is making moral judgments. Here is the problem. We don't love God. We want to avoid God at all cost. And so what we do is we suppress the knowledge of God, which is hardwired into our hearts, hardwired into our minds. We suppress that knowledge and we exchange the truth of God for a lie, okay? So rather than God being the creator of all things, instead of God being over all things, instead of God being the determiner of right and wrong, we exchange that truth for a lie. We create another story. Rather than living in God's story, we create another story for ourselves to live in. And because God is true, when you exchange God and you write your own story and you write your own rules, those stories and those rules will be inevitably wrong. Right? Because we exchange the truth of God for a lie. We live in a lie, and therefore we legislate lies, and we have a sense of right and wrong, but it's been completely reversed because we have suppressed the knowledge of God and we exchange the truth of God for a lie. We have written our own stories and we have written our own laws. And in this world, in this lie of a story, in a world that has rejected the truth of God, not wearing a mask outside is more offensive than women being objectified by revealing their bodies. In this mess of a world, what is outrageous is that a NFL quarterback would have the gall to go be with hookers without a mask, right? The real tragedy is not that he wasn't wearing a mask. The real tragedy that this man is participating in the objectification of women. That's the tragedy, right? But this world has exchanged that truth for a lie that says it's okay to objectify women and use them as long as you wear a mask. And it's the same thing when it comes to the fate of the unborn, the rights of the unborn. It's okay in this lie of a world to slaughter unborn innocent children. That's okay. But it's not okay to suggest that that is an immoral act. It's outraged, but it's misplaced outrage because we cannot stop making moral judgments. Those on the left are making moral judgments. Those on the right are making moral judgment. It is an inescapable reality. But here's the thing. When you reject God, when you suppress the truth of God, and when you exchange the truth of God for a lie, your outrage will almost always be misplaced. We will be prone to get angry and irritated and frustrated over all the wrong things. And here's what we need right now as the church in North America. We need to be encouraged and we need to be informed biblically so that we can get outraged about the right things. Right? God made us in his image. We are moral beings. We are to discern between right and wrong according to God's standards, which are contained in the scriptures. It is good and right for us to get outraged about the things that are outrageous to God. Okay? So I hope that makes sense to you. The pervasive nature of misplaced outrage is due to the fact that we're image bearers of God. And the reason it's misplaced is because we are living in a lie of a world. And the only solution to that is an awakening of the soul. It is a embracing of the law of God as it's revealed to us in the scriptures. It is to confess and profess and embrace and to live in the great reality that Jesus Christ is Lord of Lords. He is King of Kings, and he is over all nations. Then and only then will our outrage be directed at the right things. All right, well, thanks for hanging around with me today for this episode of The Blitz. Until next time, take care, and we'll see you soon. Adios.